Welcome back to Algebra with Miss Swartz. Today we are going to move on to slope-intercept form. We have a lot of things we need to talk about, so we're going to jump right in. We're on section 3.5, and there will be some of this in your journal on page 81. So, how can we describe the graph of the equation y equals mx plus b? So we talked about yesterday ax plus by equals c. Okay, today y equals mx plus b. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to understand is slope-intercept form. So we're going to be working with slopes, we're going to be working with intercepts. So the slope m of a non-vertical line passing through 2 points. Okay, so here are 2 points, x1 and y1, x2 and y2 is the ratio of the rise over the run. Very important. Rise over run. Need to know it. Okay? So the rise is how much it moves up or down. The run is obviously how much it moves left to right. So it's the change in y's over the change in x's. So if we were to calculate slope, we could use this formula, y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. You will use that so much that it will become very well known in your world. Okay, so you have your 2 ordered pairs. Let's say, for example, 1, 2, and 3, 4. You could find the slope by using this formula. When the line rises from left to right, the slope is positive, and we're going to talk about the different pieces of that. And then when a line falls from left to right, the slope is negative. So you can kind of double check yourself to make sure you're doing it correctly based on how it looks. So now since we know what slope is, let's try to find it. Okay, so describe the slope of each line, then find the slope. So when it says describe the slope, it wants to know, is it a positive or a negative slope? Well, this slope is going from left to right, it's going up. So this is going to be a positive slope. So that's describing it. Then find the slope. So remember, slope is rise over run. So when we have a picture, we can pick a couple points on the graph. So here's a point and here's a point as it's showing you. And we can just count how much is it going up and how much is it going over. So from here to here, we're going up 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our rise. And we're going over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's our run. We're going to simplify that to 2/3. So our slope would be 2/3 in this case. Okay, for B, we're going down from left to right, so this is going to be a negative slope. Okay, so my rise over run, well, in this case, my rise is actually going down, so that makes it negative. Here are my 2 points that I just picked on the graph. So I'm going down 1, 2, 3, so -3 over, and I'm going over 2, and I can leave it as a fraction, as an improper fraction, because we want it in rise over run, that format. We don't want 1 and 1/2. That doesn't make a lot of sense to us in slope terms. Okay. So we'll try one more together, and I'll have you try 2 on your own. So this is going to be negative. It's falling from left to right. It's going down. So here are my 2 points that it gives me. I'm just going to count to see my rise. It's going down 1, 2, so it's going to be a -2 for my rise. And then my run from here to here, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it's going to the right, so that's positive. If it was going to the left, that would be negative. But we want to work left to right. So -2/5 would be my slope. So you're going to look at 2 and 3, see if you can figure those slopes out. Okay, then we also need to be able to look at a table and figure out the slope. Okay, so if we see this table, we have these points on a graph. We don't actually have the graph in front of us. Can we find the slope from that? Should be able to, because really what we have here is 2 points. We have xy there and then xy there. Remember, we have the change in y's divided by the change in x's. So we can use our formula for slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I could pick any 2 points here, and I could use those and plug them in. So this is my x1 and y1, and this is my x2 and y2. I'm just going to plug them into the spots, okay? So this is going to be 14 minus 20 over, our x2 is 7 minus 4. Okay, so 14 minus 20 is going to give me negative 6 over 7 minus 4 is going to be 3. We can simplify this. We can simplify this to negative 2 over 1, or negative 2 can be a slope, but we know that would be negative 2 over 1, and that would be our slope. So you could pick any of these 2 points in your chart. So I'm going to do one more. You're going to try C on your own. So if I pick these bottom 2, okay, so this is my x1 and y1, this is my x2 and y2. Sometimes it's good to write that out. So I have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so plug in what you know. We got 2 minus 2 over 5 minus 3. That's going to give us 0 over 2. So our slope is actually 0 in this case. What would that look like? Okay, just to have a discussion here. So a slope measures the steepness of a line. Okay, we didn't talk about that on the definition back here. But it measures the steepness of a line. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so if a slope is 0, it has 0 steepness. Okay, it's going to be a horizontal line. It has 0 steepness, it's going to be a horizontal line. All right, try C on your own. See what happens there. So here's just kind of a summary. This is actually on page 82 of your journal, but positive slope, it's going to lie, the line is rising from left to right. The line falls from left to right on a negative slope. We just talked about a slope of 0, that's a horizontal line. And something that we didn't necessarily talk about, but maybe you saw, okay, was undefined slope. It's a vertical line. It's too steep. We can't even define it. Okay, so it's undefined is what we would call that. So if you have something over 0, three things cannot be divided into 0 groups. So this would be considered undefined. Okay, so that's just part of what we're doing today. Now we need to be able to take that information and use it to help us graph. So moving on, slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. When we have this as a form, okay, this is slope-intercept form. The m is our slope, very important, and the b is actually our y-intercept. Think about why that would be, because if x is 0, okay, this is going to cancel, so y equals b. That's where it's going to hit the y-axis. When x equals 0, it's going to hit the y-axis. Okay, so that's why b is always the y-intercept. So if we know those two things, that makes graphing pretty easy, because we can find the y-intercept, plot the y-intercept, and then using the slope, we can get another point off of that. So let's look at finding those pieces. So it says find the slope and the y-intercept of the graph of the linear equation. Well, based on what we just talked about, our slope is going to be negative 6. Our y-intercept here, if I plugged in x, 0 for x, would be 1. Pretty simple. Okay, what about here? Our slope here, okay, can be 0, because this is a horizontal line. Remember, y equals is a horizontal line. Where it hits the y-axis is going to be at 8. Okay, and number 8 is a little different. We have to kind of manipulate number 8. We got to get y alone. We got to get it in the form y equals mx plus b, and you will have to do this. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. So I have 4y equals negative x minus 10. And then I have to divide by 4 to get y alone. So now, okay, if I separate this out, I get negative 1/4 x minus 10 divided by 4, or 5 halves, or 2 and 1/2. Either way. So your slope is going to be negative 1/4, and your y-intercept is going to be negative, because if we keep change, 2.5 or 5 halves. So you may have to manipulate your graph a little bit to kind of make it work. Okay, so now it says, looking at the graph, figure out the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, well, it still gives you the piece here, so m is going to be 2/3. Now, if you had 2 points, you could kind of figure this out. Here's a point, here's a point. It goes up 2, it rises 2, and over 3. That's our slope, 2/3. Where does it hit the y-axis? I'm on it already at 2. Okay, here, go ahead and do that one on your own. Find the slope, find the y-intercept. Alright, so now we're going to take this information to use it and help us graph. So first, to help us graph, we got to get this in the term y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to subtract 2x, so I get y equals negative 2x plus 2. So what's my slope? Well, m in this position is negative 2. That's my slope. Another way I could write that, so I have rise over run, is negative 2 over 1. My y-intercept is going to be b, so that's going to be at 2. So I can start graphing from there. It's going to hit the y-axis at 2, and I know my slope is going to be negative 2 over 1. So this is my rise, and this is my run. So I can find my next point by going down 2 over 1. Okay? I can find another point by going down 2 over 1. Okay? Now, I could go up 2, but then for it to still be a negative situation, I'd have to go left 1. Okay, so you always have, if you have a negative involved, you always have to kind of do the opposite, go in the opposite direction. So now you use the straight edge, you really only need 2 points. But there you go. It says identify the x-intercept. Where does it hit the x-axis? It hits it at 1. Okay, I got one more example for you, and then we'll wrap up for today. So it says graph the linear equation, identify the x-intercept. So first of all, we need to figure out the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, the slope is here at 4, so 4 over 1 is your rise over run, and the y-intercept's at negative 4, based on your b, if you do plus a negative. Okay, so we're going to hit it at negative 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's where it hits the y-axis. Then I'm going to use my slope to graph my next point. I'm going to rise 4, run 1. And it's all positive, so I'm going to go up and right. 1, 2, 3, 4, run 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, run 1. So my graph would look pretty steep because it's got a larger slope. Something like that. Use a straight edge. So my x-intercept again is at 1. Alright, so we did cover a lot of things today. To kind of summarize, slope. Slope is the change in y's over the change in x's. So you will have to use that on your homework. And then we talked about, okay, what slope is. Slope is the steepness of a line. And we talked about slope-intercept form, how slope is represented by m, and your y-intercept is represented by b, and we can use that to graph. So this is another way we've learned how to graph outside of just using our x and y-intercepts. So your homework is listed here. This is due Monday. We'll talk about that in class. Due Monday. A lot of problems there, but if you have questions, make sure to come see me at some point. Have a wonderful day.